Now, the shorthand of marriage, translated over time, is a lost language, just ancient fragments of letters and torn corners of reverie. I feel like I'm pushing myself out from the inside, stretching this restrictive container. All the while, she stayed and prayed with me into the uncertainty. Still she watches, clearing the way while I cannot see, stands beside me when I need strength to move forward, gently reminding me that it's always about beginning and then beginning again. Marriage is a long time to be away from myself. Thank you. And it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage a man who really did help me quite a bit on this journey. One of my most favorite men in the world, Wayne Dyer. Can I stay?
Wow, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My goodness. Those of you who know me and have heard me speak over the years know I use a lot of poetry, and I've been writing a lot of poetry lately. Nancy really speaks like a poet, and her book is so beautiful, and I said, you go out and read a poem, now I'll go sell your book, because it's really beautiful. And I knew her husband, and I knew them, and and she struggled through that divorce process. Those of you who've been through it know emotionally how wrenching, gut-wrenching it can be. I've been there, and to never get over it. You just try to become someone who turns it into love. And this is just a few words from one of her poems that I love so much, and this is how a poet thinks. She said, "This is the summer of heartache and goodbyes. I wake and lay in bed, remembering all the things that will never happen, all the places we will not go, all the things we will not do. The taste in my mouth is of a marriage crashing." Do you feel that? That's how poets do. I'd like to give this to my ex-wife. Actually, my wife, who separated from me, but I love very much. The mother of my children. She just said, "I owe you for that." So my name is Wayne Dyer, and I'm 71 years old. Wow, that's not good. That's not good when they applaud your age. And I have sex almost every day. Almost on Monday, almost on Tuesday, almost. I love that line. I don't know why, I just keep using it. My friend Jack LaLanne, who passed away a year or two ago, set it up till his 93rd birthday as he was speaking, so I hope to be doing the same. And I'd also like to say to you, to the world, that I am well. Thank you. Not only am I well, but I am perfect health. And those words will have much more meaning for you when I finish in a little while, to be able to say the things that you are. I am. Two very important words, I am. So this is the first time, I think, ever, that all 8 of my children are here with me. We are having our Thanksgiving tomorrow because I'm not going to be here in Florida. So, and it's wonderful to have them there. My daughter Tracy, who's sitting there in the front, and she began a business after leaving behind a corporate life because she really wanted to fulfill her destiny, her dharma from within her heart. And she struggled over and over again with this whole idea of giving up your benefits and giving up all of the security and safety of a good job in order to do something that her heart told her was important to do. Those of you who have seen my film, The Shift, know that that's what I speak about, what it's all about. If you haven't seen it with Portia de Rossi and Michael DeLuise and myself, I encourage you to do so because it's about shifting, making a move in a different direction. She started her own business, and her business is designing her own handbags. But the interesting thing is she also designs them from and builds them from recycled water bottles, plastic water bottles. I think that's phenomenal. Here's one of them up here now, and I wanted Nancy. Is Nancy? Are you? Where did you go? Did Nancy leave? There was a lady right over here in a wheelchair that I was going to give this to, and I don't. Oh, there. What is your name? What is her name? What is it? Lucy? Well, Tracy, would you take that back? And it's so beautiful. Made out of recycled water bottles instead of putting them into the ocean. Here. Would you give that to her? Well, let me tell you about... There's the lady right there. That's a gift for you. God bless you. And I see you walking out of that wheelchair one of these days. There you go. Thanks, honey. And she has them here, and there's never a better audience for this sort of thing than a Hay House audience, because it's loving ourselves but also loving our planet. There is a swath of plastic in the Pacific Ocean from bags that have been put into landfills that we take home from our grocery stores without even thinking. Believe it or not, it's the size of the state of Texas. And it's out there floating, just all this plastic, and it's all unnecessary. We can do something to change that, and I honor you for doing that. My other daughter is here, Serena. Where are you, Serena? Oh, there you are. Come here, honey. Go around. I want to introduce, she started a project. You can go around, go back, and move quickly, okay? I'm a big star. We don't have time for this. But Serena has had this passion for children that are being trafficked. And so this Penn State horror story that is being broadcast all over the news is a big part of that is young children being sold into trafficking. And you're going to see a connection to that, I believe, as this unfolds. And she has started her own charity, and she just inaugurated it tonight, and I'm going to give her 2 minutes to tell you a little bit about it. I'm wearing one of the wristbands. So this is my daughter, Serena, who received her master's degree from the University of Miami in international relations. Serena Dyer.
Hi. So I didn't know he was going to bring me up here, but yeah, actually my boyfriend and I started a coalition.
You have a boyfriend?
Yeah.
Okay.
We started a coalition that we're actually just launching this week, and what we're trying to do is just raise awareness about child trafficking. We're not asking for money. We're not asking, well, for money. We're just asking for people to sign up for our e-alert so that anytime there's, let's say, a bill waiting to go through Congress, and we need to get people behind it to get it passed, we can send you an email and get you involved, or if you want to help or find out more information, you can come get a free bracelet and sign up. But basically, we started to do this when we came across some really alarming statistics, like the number one place that an American man seeks sex with a child is America. And there are 300,000 kids in America every year that have acts of trafficking for the purpose of sex committed against them. And I can't live with that, and I believe an audience like that wouldn't want to accept something like that either. So I think that this is a great way for people to just learn more about it and spread the awareness so that we can get rid of it, starting in America and then on a global level.
How many children are sold into trafficking worldwide?
Worldwide, they estimate that there are 12 million people that are trafficked, and 50% of those are children. And like I said, in places like Africa, the purpose of trafficking a child is a lot of times for labor, or enforced slavery, or war. But here, it's for sex. And I just find that to be so disturbing. And he always told me that no amount of feeling bad will ever make anything feel good. So I don't focus on how bad it is. I think that we can make it better. And that's what I focus on, that we can really make this better, one child at a time.
Thank you, honey. Very nice. I won't go through all of my children because they take up the first whole section over here, but I'll probably mention them throughout the evening. I'm proud of every single one of them, and very, very blessed to have such beautiful children. And the mother of those children, Marcy, a woman I love so much, I give her an awful lot of the credit for all of that. In fact, I give her all of the credit for it. So I've just finished taping a new public television special, which will be airing in March. It's the 9th one, and I must say how proud I am that since we started these in 1998, we're getting close to $250 million being raised for public television, just from the pledges that people make. And public television is another one of those wonderful pro bono things that I do and that so many people do to bring a different kind of energy into our homes. You know, the energy of Sesame Street. My daughter Sage is sitting there in the front rows, now 22, and you still have Barney, little baby Bibs, and everything was Barney, and that was the dinosaur, the purple dinosaur. Anyway, so that will be airing in March, and it's based on what I have been doing for the past year or so. Almost a perfect storm has occurred in my life, beginning on the 21st of April this year, my mother's 95th birthday, and I'll be sharing some of that with you here today. Miracles have been taking place in my life. Healing has been taking place. My whole emphasis on this, most of you probably know because ABC World News did a whole story on me, but they focused on this diagnosis of leukemia, which is now gone. I don't pay attention to it. It's not a part of my life. And I'm living from a perfect health perspective every single day. And it's been a marvelous shift, and I want to talk to you about it, not about my own story necessarily, but about the principles that are involved in making this wonderful and powerful shift. So much of what I speak about here tonight will probably sound strange, even to this audience, which you wouldn't think that would happen here. I know what you guys are like. I know how crazy you are, how weird it is. But there have been things that have been showing up in my life, and principles for me to write about, and things for me to tell you and share with you that have really surprised me. And I've always lived by the principle of Tilopa, the 10th century Sufi master, who said, have a mind that is open to everything and attached nowhere, attached to nothing. And my wife and I always had this attitude in bringing up our children, that keep an open mind. and anything that you immediately reject. Get your ego out of that and just open yourself to the words of Jesus in the New Testament when he said, with God, all things are possible. And I always ask my audience, what does that leave out? What does all things are possible leave out? And obviously the answer is nothing. In the book that I wrote for the film, The Shift, it's also called The Shift, it has 4 chapters. From ambition to meaning. Moving our lives away from our egos and into a place of meaning, what Serena was up here speaking about. It's a sense of feeling that you're making a difference in the world. And towards the end of that book, I quoted from a man named Joel Goldsmith, who wrote The Infinite Way, in parentheses, in eternity. And we actually had friends on Maui, a friend on Maui named Alexandra, who's in her 90s, and in her late 80s, she would go out kayaking every day. And she actually dated Joel Goldsmith back in the 1950s when he lived on Hawaii. He's been very much of a hero to me. And then from his book, Parentheses in Eternity, which is what your life is, a parentheses in eternity, he said these words. He said, then there are those who reach a stage in which they realize the futility of this constant striving and struggling for the things that perish, things which, after they are obtained, prove to be shadows. It is at this stage that some persons turn from this seeking for things in the outer realm to a seeking for them from God. And that has been probably the major shift in my life, taking the focus in my life off of the things, the accomplishments, the acquisitions, the reputation, ownership, which we begin to identify ourselves as, and to begin to recognize that Pierre Teilhard, the great French priest who was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for his outrageous ideas in 1918, he said, you're not here as a human being having a spiritual experience, that it's the other way around. And you've all heard it, that we are all infinite spiritual beings having a temporary human experience and beginning to live our life from this spiritual place, its place of spirit, where we recognize and identify ourselves not on the basis of what the ego says, which is on the basis of what we have and what we accomplish, what we own, and what others think of us, not based on our belief in our separation from each other, and most egregiously, not based upon our belief in our separation from God. A shift, if you will, to an awareness of our own divinity. And from that place, what is possible for all of us. So I'm going to recite a poem here from a great poet. His name was Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He wrote a poem called The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And he also wrote one that wasn't that well known. I put it in a book of mine years ago called Real Magic. I started it with this. And I'd like you to, as I give these words, I'd like you to think about what the poet is asking and whether or not you believe in your heart or know in your heart that what the poet is saying is possible for you, or whether you think it's just the fancy kind of fanciful meanderings and dreamings of an idealist. Ask yourself, is this possible? He said, what if you slept? And what if in your sleep you dreamed? And what if in your dream you went to heaven and there picked a strange and wonderful flower. And what if, when you awoke, you held that flower in your hand? Ah, what then? He concludes his poem. Ah, what then? And I wonder if you think such a thing is really a possibility. That you can go into a state in which there is no form, no beginnings, no ends, no boundaries, no limits, and bring from that invisible place something that has substance, that has boundaries, that has form, that you can hold, that you can smell. And then ask yourself if that's a possibility. I wonder how many of you think yes, and how many of you think no. I'm not going to ask, but the fact is that this room has, it looks like 2,500 or so people in the room tonight. Every single one of you are an example of what that poet just described. Every single one of you came from a formless place and are now form. All of you. Every flower that you look at began in a seed, and the seed began in something that is invisible. There's a little girl here tonight. Camille, where's Camille? 6 years old or so, 7 years old. I was swimming with her a little while ago, and she showed me her teeth. And she said, I lost 2 of my teeth. And look, there's 2 new teeth coming underneath it, and she was all excited about that. And I said to her mom and my daughter Summer, who was here, just imagine that in that tiny little infinitesimally small little speck that built into that was what she's going through right now. What is there to do? There's nothing for us to, we can't make a change. In that tiny little invisible speck, everything that you needed for this physical journey was handed for you. And you don't believe in miracles? In the great Tao, many of you know I lived the Tao for a year, the year I turned 65, and wrote a book on it. A book that I always tell people, carry it with you wherever you go. Some call it the wisest book ever written. And I lived the principles of that little book, and I encourage people to just stick it in your new purse. The ones that are made out of plastic, recycled water bottles. Is that all right? And but just carry it with you, because you don't even really need to open it, because the energy from what's in here will come to you. I had a great teacher in India who used to say, he wrote a collection of his writings was called I Am That, by Nisargadatta Maharaj, and he used to say to his devotees, you don't have to read it, just carry it with you. And I heard that, I was in my early 40s when I heard that, and I just thought, this is just another one of those crazy guys over there in India giving us advice, and I just didn't think that it would be possible to get. But now I've really come to an awareness that energy is in everything, and that just holding this book, literally, you could muscle test this, kinesiology, and put this thing next to your heart, and you will be stronger with it than you were without it. Just try it. Just carry it with you. Let me see, who would like a copy of this? Oh, that hand right there, the first hand up. Yeah, you. Yep. No, next to you. Yeah, stand up. Would you like to carry this with you wherever you go? There you are. God bless you. The Tao Te Ching. It's only a few dollars. It's worth having. One of the great lines in the Tao is what I'm speaking about here at these opening lines, is that that says that none of you are doing anything. You're all just being done. And when you look at your physical body, there's a recognition that this is absolutely true. You know? I mean, what can you do to change it? You know, things are drooping, folks. You can fix them up if you want to, but the inevitable is there. And the hair, well, for some of you it turns gray, and for some of you it just turns. It just goes somewhere else. And you begin to see, there's also a great line in the book, because my son, who's sitting in the front row, Sands, who graduates in a couple of weeks and is going to start supporting me. I'm so happy about that. Because I often have quoted Lao Tzu, and he has often said, the Tao, God, divine mind, the Tao does nothing. And it leaves nothing undone. It's all perfect. So I say to him over the summer over in Maui, I said, Sands, come on, do something. You got to do it. Let's go. We got to do something. He looked up and he said, I do nothing. And I leave nothing undone. So this stuff can come back at you. It's his favorite line now. He's a Taoist philosopher. So the great Saint Swami Muktananda was asked the question, what is real? And his response is really worth you hearing. And something for you to really think about, because the strange place that I think it's weird, it's just so magical, but it's still, it's hard for us to wrap our arms around this idea that all things are possible. This awareness that about what is real. And Muktananda said, that is real, which never changes. So what part of your physical life meets that definition? We are all in these bodies that are changing every second. Therefore, by that definition, they're not real. So you go back and look at how many bodies you've been in since you showed up here. You were in a body about this big that weighed somewhere between 5 and 10 pounds, and that was you. And you were in a little toddler body about this tall, and you certainly, if someone said, is that you, you would have said, yeah, that's me. And then you were in a 13 or 12-year-old body, which is one of these. I have 6 daughters, and they have a stance, you know, when they're about 13, and they go like this, and their leg goes up and down, and they roll their eyes and look at you like you ought to try to get a life someplace. You were in one of those bodies, teenage body, and you thought that was real. That's when you get the great learnings. One of my daughters, Serena, said to me one time when I raised my voice and asked her to hurry up and get moving, come on. She looked at, I wonder what all those people would think of Mr. Positive if they could see him here this morning. She turned to her sister and said, would you buy a book from someone who yells at his 11-year-old daughter? I'd sneak out of the room and try to. Best line I ever heard from any of my children ever, and I followed them around with a pad of paper to give me material, was from my daughter Summer. When she was 13 and her sister was 11, sitting at the breakfast table, and all of a sudden about 6:30 in the morning, and Summer looked at Serena and said, well, if you didn't have any feet, would you wear shoes? And Serena at that time, and it hasn't gone away, could hardly stand anybody talking to her at 6 o'clock in the morning, and said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard you say. Don't even talk to me. Why are you, just don't even talk to me. Close your mouth. Why are you talking to me? That's so stupid. What if you didn't have any feet? Would I wear shoes? Of course not. And Summer looked at me and said, don't get mad at me. I just wonder why you're wearing that bra. That's, so... you were in one of those bodies. I was in a 20-year-old body, and I saw a picture of it on the PBS show, and I was doing a little bit of this, and the pictures of me at various stages of my life were going by, and the film was, the camera was looking at this picture, and it stopped on a picture of me when I was about 20 years old. And I'm 70, when that was 51 years ago. And there's not one cell of that body left on this planet. I really thought it was real. And when you were in your 20-year-old body, you thought it was real, didn't you? I mean, it's just like, you look at it, you say, of course it's real. And now you look back at it and you say, if it was real, where is it? And where did it go? Emily Dickinson, another great poet, one of my very favorite poets from Massachusetts, would give talks back in the 19th century, and she would pick up a handful of dirt, and she would say, just let this in. This quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies and lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing and frocks and curls. This passive place, a summer's nimble mansion where bloom and bees fulfilled their oriental circuit, then ceased, like these. That's who you are, if you believe that you're your body. Just quiet dust that's going to fulfill its circuit and cease. And we all know that we're something much more than that. But we haven't been raised to believe that. So my talk tonight is really about understanding there is a component of us that is beyond the physical, beyond the physical, metaphysical, beyond form, over, past, higher than form, transformed. And this part of who we are has infinite possibilities and can do anything, can heal anything, can manifest anything, can attract into our lives the right people. And you get a sense after a while that that this invisibleness that is who we are is, as you begin to elevate your awareness and move to a higher level, and this is basically the essence of it. It's that we were all conceived and born into a world and a culture in which we were raised to be ordinary. And ordinary isn't so bad. I'm not here to put down ordinary and average and fitting in and all the things that ordinary comprises. It's just not what I want for me. And I got the mic tonight. So, and ordinary really means, it means fitting in. It means getting along. It means becoming a good citizen. It means filling out the forms. It means paying your taxes. It means having your children and providing for them and taking care of them and going to work, going to school and getting good grades and graduating and your family and doing all of this all of these ordinary things, and then getting to the later stages in your life where you become a grandparent, and then you live your life through your grandchildren, and then you die. And this isn't an indictment of that. It's for me an awareness that if I put my hands here about at my waist, I am speaking about ordinary consciousness. And where I would like to take you tonight, where I have been taken in my life, particularly in the last year or so, and particularly in the last decade or so, is to a place that I call extraordinary awareness. And extraordinary awareness is, it encompasses all of ordinary, so that you're listening to an ordinary man. I fill out the forms, or I get somebody to do it for me, more like it, and I pay my taxes, and I've provided for all of my children, and I went to school and saw that they went to school and was there for them as much as I could be, and did all of the things that we would say constitute ordinary. But extraordinary doesn't stop here. See, this is where it stops for so many people. And they go through their life with this, remember the Barbra Streisand song? Is that all there is? And there's this sense that there's more. There's a calling. There's something in me that transcends the physical, that transcends ordinary. And this something that wants to move us to this extraordinary level out here is beyond the ego. Everything I've spoken about here is the ego. It's the striving for, it's an identification and a belief in my identity as a physical being, and believing in what my physical self tells me is my reality, and evaluating it on the basis of what I can see and touch and feel and smell and hear, so that it's my senses, my sensory self is here. But this up here, between ordinary and extraordinary, where I believe anyone can go at any time. Here we are what E.E. Cummings, another favorite poet, he said, to be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you just like everybody else means to fight the greatest battle there is to fight and never stop fighting. This is how the poets think. It's about going beyond average. It's about going beyond ordinary. It's about recognizing your own divinity. It's about understanding that there's something inside of you that is calling you. It's your spirit, it's your soul. And your soul, your spirit, is here in the distance between here and here. And your soul wants something very, very different than your physical body ego apparatus wants. It's not interested in fitting in. It doesn't care whether you're right. It doesn't care whether people like you. It doesn't care about whether you're a good citizen or not. I wrote these words out the other night. Let me share them with you. It says, I said, the ideal, because I'm going to write about this, the ideal of the soul, the thing that it asks for, is neither knowledge, nor light, nor happiness. The ideal of the soul is space. The ideal of the soul is immensity. the one thing it needs is to be free to expand, to reach out, to embrace the infinite. Yeah, the ideal of the soul is infinity. It is, it is miserable when it is circumscribed and restricted. The soul is not finite. What is finite? Finite means it has a beginning and it has an end, doesn't it? So that's it. It stops here and it's finite. The opposite of finite is infinite, infinite. And what is infinite? What does it mean when something is infinite? It means that it is always expanding, right? It doesn't stop any place. It is always growing. It's like the universe. It's just infinite. What do you think's at the end of the universe? Just try to imagine a finite universe. And we come up with, well, what would be at the end of it? And what we think is at the end of it is what? What is there, a wall? If there's a wall at the end of the universe, the poet would ask, what's on the other side? And where does that end? So there's getting in touch with this infinite part of ourselves is really the part of us that says, there was a song that was popular when my mother was a young woman. It was called Don't Fence Me In. Oh, give me land, lots of land, and the starry skies above. Don't fence me in. Remember that song? All the old folks singing. My daughter's looking at me, what is he going to do now? He's going to embarrass me. We don't want to be fenced in. Now, before I had any children, I had 8 theories about how to raise children. I even wrote about them. Now we have 8 children. I have no theories. But the one thing I know about raising children is this, that nobody likes being told what to do. Right, Sage? I was telling the story of you, honey, on Mother's Day one year at a restaurant where we were all there, my mother, Marcy's mom and dad, and we were all there. And Sage is, in a lot of ways, like me, what I call I tell this story at every talk, so I might as well hear it. It's the scurvy elephant. When I was in the foster home back in Mount Clemens, when I was about 6 or 7 years old, I came home from school, and Mrs. Scarf, who ran this home, had this home that a bunch of us lived. And I came home and I asked her, what's a scurvy elephant? And she said, a what? And she said, a scurvy elephant. I said, and she said, well, where did you hear that? I said, well, I heard Mrs. Poole, who was my 3rd grade teacher, talking to the principal, and she said that Wayne Dyer was in her classroom and that he was a scurvy elephant. So she got on the phone, called the principal, and the principal said, oh, no. And she said, that's Wayne. He gets everything mixed up. She didn't say that he was a scurvy elephant in her classroom. She said that he was a disturbing element in her classroom. And I always loved to say that. So a scurvy elephant is, and my teacher, Abraham Maslow, used to always say to us, you know, the number one marker of self-actualizing people is their independence of the good opinion of other people. They're just not interested in being told what to do. I watched on on my iPad, which I just got, and it had a commencement address by Steve Jobs at Stanford University. It was a 15-minute, and I just sat there, and before I meditated, I listened to what he had to say. This immensely scurvy elephant, who really, just passed away a few weeks ago, and you know, many of his biographers now saying that he's up there with Thomas Edison and Benjamin Franklin and Alexander Graham Bell, people like that. He really changed who we are as a people and how we communicate with each other. And his advice to the whole graduating class at Stanford was, don't live somebody else's dharma. Don't listen to that inner calling. And whatever it calls you to do, listen to it. And don't pay attention to anybody telling you what's possible or what's not possible, or whatever. Just fight for it. Sage was at Mother's Day, and I don't even remember what it was that she wanted to wear or didn't want to wear, but it had something to do with dresses and skirts and slacks. And I remember that Mother's Day walking in the parking lot with Sage for 45 minutes or so, talking to her about, I know exactly how you feel and how you think. I said, but there's a lot of people who think that you should maybe wear something nice. It's Mother's Day and it's a restaurant. I said, but you don't have to go back in there. We'll go home and get something afterwards if you want. And she just gave me that, I don't want to do this, and why should I be told what to wear? And I understood that. I understood it very strong. And she's still doing that. But it also serves people very, very well. This idea that I'm going to listen to that voice, and we all have it. And when we have this voice, and this voice has passion associated with it, that is, when you feel a strong passion towards what it is that you want to become, what you want to create, the kind of person that you intend to be, when you have that within you, it doesn't make any difference whether anybody else understands it or gets along with it. You don't even try to talk to anybody else about it. You just listen to it, and you become a disturbing element. You become a scurvy elephant in the world. And it's the only way you'll ever feel fulfilled. You won't get it by fitting in. So in order to, you have to listen to your soul. And your soul is that invisibleness. And your soul is not finite. Therefore, everything up to here is finite. Everything that I spoke about, filling out the forms, fitting in, being a good citizen, doing all the right things, all these things which I applaud, which are all fine, but they only take you, you end up living a half-lived life. Herman Melville, I spoke about him this morning when I spoke to the writers group here. I mean, his writing was so profound and so beautiful, and he had this one line from Moby Dick, which is really not the story about a man chasing a whale. It's the story of a person who has an obsession, and that whale is a symbol of I must achieve it. I read a really great book this summer. Every one of my kids have read it. It's called Unbroken by Laura Hillerbrand. And I recommend that you read it, and wherever this is going around the world, get a copy of it. It's the story of Louis Zamperini, who survived on a raft across the ocean and was taken to a Japanese prisoner of war camp, and on and on and on, and survived against all odds. And then at the end was able to go back and forgive. I mean, it's just a powerful, beautiful, spiritual experience. And and Ahab was pursuing his own inner voice that just couldn't be stilled. And this is how Melville spoke, because I live on an island in the middle of the Pacific, Maui, where I invite you to come in January to listen to the whales. Go on a whale watch with me, and if you like what I'm speaking about here tonight, we do 2 or 3 days on it in January. Here's Melville. He said, "For as this appalling ocean surrounds the verdant land, so in the soul of man lies one insular Tahiti, full of peace and joy, but encompassed by all of the horrors of the half-lived life. The half-lived life is the life that gets you to ordinary, to filling out the forms, and then stopping. The self-actualized life starts at ordinary and listens to its soul, which you can't find, but you know is there. And there are some that doubt that it's there. I had a friend who's a neurosurgeon over in Maui, and he was saying, you know, you talk about this soul thing a lot. He said, I've poked around in a lot of human brains, and I've never seen a soul or anything resembling a soul. And I asked him, I said, Chuck, I said, while you're in there poking around, have you ever seen a thought? Well, no, of course not. I said, do you think there are thoughts? That such a thing as a thought exists? You can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't. The fact is that virtually everything that exists is metaphysical, beyond the physical. It's very limited, our physical world, and it's not even real by Muktananda standards because it's always changing. The body that you came into this room with will be a different, you'll leave in a different body. There's something called you that just keeps occupying more and more and more new bodies until ultimately it just sheds it all together. The great Irish poet William Butler Yeats said, an aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick. What an image. Unless soul claps its hands and sings, and louder sings, for every tatter in its mortal dress. We're just tattered coats on a stick, unless we have a soul. And when we have a soul, the soul says, don't fence me in. The soul says, don't tell me what to be. Don't tell me what I can't do. Don't you dare impose upon me who you are and what you think I should be. That's your soul. And all of you have this, because this body of yours is just an illusion. It's just a very temporary parenthesis in eternity, isn't it? And you know that you're going to leave it. And all the evidence is there, and you just keep looking at it. You try to pretend that it's not there, and so you color the gray, and you lift them up, and you shift it around, and you put on a girdle, and you do all of the, I don't know, you do all of the stuff to pretend that it's, and you're not doing a damn thing in this world. You're just being done. You're just being done. But what you're being done by is the higher self. So what I would like to offer you here is a program, if you will, sort of a preview. I've been reading and studying and lecturing all over the place for the last year or two. And for some reason, I've been given a big voice and a big audience. For some reason, I'm allowed to go on public television and present in prime time 3- and 4-hour specials on the Tao Te Ching, or on the power of intention, or on changing your life, living from a spiritual place. And it must be because I have had this wonderful opportunity handed to me that I've been getting exposed to more and more and more about the miraculous power that comes to us when we start our life from ordinary and just leave that part of it to be taken care of and move into this extraordinary place, this place that all the great writers speak about, where we transcend this ego of ours that believes that who we are is so important, and believes that who we are is what we own, and who believes that what we are is in competition with others and has to defeat others and has to win and has to be better than. I love the poets. I feel very poetic tonight. A great Indian poet named Rabindranath Tagore won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1927 with a collection of poetry called Gitanjali. And in there, he writes about this ego of ours. He says, I went out alone on my way to my tryst, but who is this me in the dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter. He is my own little self, my Lord. He knows no shame. But I, the invisible me, I am ashamed to come to thy door in his company. That's the ego. The part of us that makes the dust rise from the earth with our swagger, who's always adding his loud voice. But inside there's this being that says, who I am is so much more than that, so much more divine. And in order to get to the path of moving towards extraordinary, and the fact is that even though many people will attend a talk like this and many people will buy the books and study it and look at it, the percentage of people who are willing to leave ordinary behind is very, very small. Honestly, it's only a handful of people in this room. Even though the intentions are good, the book that I'm reading now, I came across a quote. I think I'm going to read it, if I have it here. Ah, here it is. It was by a French philosopher, mathematician. Some of you studied him when you took a philosophy class. His name was René Descartes. He's the one who said, I think, therefore I am. I don't like to question these guys. I used to teach them at the university, but I think he had it backwards. I really believe it should be, I am. Therefore, I think. Well, that's just my opinion. I'll talk about it later. And Descartes said, in order to reach the truth, it is necessary at some point in one's life to rid oneself of all the opinions one has ever received and to rebuild one's entire system of knowledge from the very foundation. And I think I've done that recently. Just tossed out. I think this diagnosis of leukemia 2 years ago really helped me to do that. And to just say, I'm starting over. I'm going here. And I've been doing it in some ways. Many of people think I've done it my whole life, but honestly I haven't. I've wallowed around in that ego a lot in my life. And so in order to do this thing, you have to recognize that it fundamentally involves changing your concept of yourself. And changing your concept of yourself really means understanding what is your concept of yourself. Like, who are you? What is your concept of yourself? Your concept of yourself is everything that you believe to be true about yourself and what's possible for you and anyone else. And it really means changing most of that, because you have been raised to be ordinary. You've been raised to believe in your limits and how far you can go. And you've have this imposed upon you by your well-meaning parents and grandparents and culture and religion and business and education. The systems that you have been immersed into have basically told you, get here. This is not for you. And it might not have even been done, and sometimes they might have even said, oh, you can do anything. And then we'll start to tell you all of the reasons, all of the exceptions to that, that I'm imposing on you. Like, you got to get dressed in a certain way for Mother's Day. And you've got to fit in, and you've got to do this, and it's by God, it's like the soul has no finiteness to it. It's infinite, so it means it just wants to keep expanding. It wants to keep growing.